I'm Joseph Wolf, CEO of EFG Wealth Management Israel.
And I am Michael Dadoun, Head of Private Banking at EFG Wealth Management Israel.
And this is Market Makers IL, a financial podcast where we bring you conversations about shekels and stories about success in the Israeli market.
But let's be clear, this is not investment advice, and the conversations with our guests should not be taken as advice either.
All right, Michael, here we are, pushing boundaries. We started this podcast as Market Makers IL, the IL being Israel. Sitting across from us is a really old friend of mine, Ben Reitzes, who has children who are Israeli but is not Israeli and works in New York. So what are your thoughts here?
I think it's a great idea to have Ben with us. You guys, it always starts with children and grandchildren and way back, and then you see how, I want to see how you got here today.
All right, so here we are. So we've got Ben Reitzes here. Ben happens to be in Israel. He is one of those guys who just when I needed it, and we've known each other since, I think, the late 90s, and I'll go through some of that, but he's one of those guys that during this war, once in a while I just get that, hey bro, how you doing? And I didn't say it straight up, but you've got some of those too, Michael. You're sitting here, and the last week was totally terrifying, I've got to admit.
Yes.
The first part of the war was scary, and last week was terrifying. And then Ben pops into my WhatsApp, and he's like, I'm coming to Israel. And I'm like, okay, well, that's enough to get you on the podcast.
Well, he probably came before the Israeli that are still stuck out, abroad. How did that happen?
How'd I get here? It was creative. I got here creatively through Athens. There's a layover that I wouldn't recommend, especially with kids.
So here he is. So welcome to Market Makers IL. Our focus is, trying to share the wisdom of successful local business people. But, we had to stretch the rules a little bit here. So Ben and I go way back, like I said. The merger of UBS and Payne Weber, where I was a young analyst on the UBS side covering, telecom equipment. And Ben was this, young but very, very ahead of his time, successful young analyst covering, of all things, printers. And I was trying to think, how many printer companies were there?
Yeah, it was Lexmark, Xerox. It all came together. My thesis was that you needed a PC to buy a printer, and that then I'll be the PC analyst eventually. And it eventually happened. So being a top printer analyst led to being head of IT hardware research at UBS. So it was all in a scheme that I had.
It was all a scheme.
Yeah.
So that's step two. So I left UBS, I moved to Israel, and then all of a sudden I see, I had moved to Lehman and Barclays, my old colleague joins Lehman Brothers. And so here we are back at the same firm again. I ended up taking a job that had me back and forth in New York, so we worked together a little bit. But then Ben, we say this in research, and I don't say it disparagingly, but Ben took a little sidestep into what we used to call the dark side and became an investment banker for a little bit, worked at Moelis, did a little bit of M&A. We'll get through that. And now he's back to his research roots at Melius, which is a boutique research firm, founded, started, established, whatever you want to say, by a bunch of ex-Barclays guys. And so you're back with some guys you worked with who weren't tech guys, and now you're talking to us for a little bit. So I got that right?
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here, guys. Thanks.
So Joseph broke the rules. What's your connection to Israel?
Well, I have 4 Israeli kids. I've always been coming here since about 1997 and gotten closer to the tech community, especially. I think it started at UBS. There was a strong franchise here. Joseph was here. There were a few guys that I remember doing research over here. And then it just continued into Barclays and Lehman, and then that team went to Barclays. And then when I became a banker, I was always trying to drum up some business here, kind of keep it part of my tech portfolio. And been coming here most summers for the last 20 years. And my kids are very affiliated here. I got 2 almost 18-year-olds and 2 14-year-olds. So they're Israeli citizens and enjoying the time here. And it's been a little hard the last 2 years. Obviously, since October 7th, it's been a little difficult to get here and stay here. And the minute this stuff cleared up, we just hopped on planes to get over here. And reaffiliate. Yeah, I got to see Joseph here. He's going to pay for lunch. I'm all ready to go.
Exactly. I mean, you got to take care of the little things.
I made sure he's buying.
And I gladly said yes. Just for this alone, it was worth it. Let's just do before we get into a little bit of tech, because you've been in tech for a long time. I want to go through some of some of the developments you've seen, and I think that idea that printing leads PCs, printing, they're all one ecosystem. And now I look at your coverage, and it's basically just about anything you want to do in tech. So we'll get to that, but let's share a couple of Lehman Brothers stories. Maybe people can hear some fun stuff. I'm going to tell you one from Israel. So Israel is 7 hours ahead of New York, and you're watching this thing unfold, and it's in real time, but we're also 7 hours ahead in our life. And so there's this midnight deadline for the Fed or some other bank to save Lehman Brothers. But for me, that's already 7 a.m. So I've been up all night.
Yeah.
We have no idea what's going on, and then it's over. So we go to the office. We have no idea what's going on. It was not as quick here that there was this immediate sign up with Barclays. But then it became apparent, like on Tuesday or Wednesday, that there was either going to be something with Nomura, who ended up with the UK business, or something with Barclays, because the Israel office of Lehman was so old. We were actually a subsidiary of New York and not the UK. So on Tuesday or Wednesday, somebody sends out an email to the whole office in Tel Aviv. They're like, "Can whoever took the printer from the 21st floor please bring it back?"
That's all you got.
That's exactly. We were loading up stuff just to make sure they had something after Lehman Brothers.
Well, that was a crazy time, because I was at UBS, and they actually, I think, almost invented that mortgage-backed security trade that went bad. And then, that didn't look too promising. And so then I got this great deal from Lehman Brothers. And then, so little did I know, I was going from the Titanic to the Hindenburg at the time. And UBS obviously had a great balance sheet that, actually got challenged and then was able to save itself. And obviously, Lehman Brothers was a little bit of a different story, but it was such a great culture. It was such a I was there a very short time, but it was a great culture. Obviously, Stu Lindy, our good friend who's passed, who we love dearly,
yes,
was big to us. So, the funny part about the Lehman story was, I remember, you can remember when you're a grown man, when you've cried. And that was a night I cried. And literally my kids at the time were young, and they were in the bathtub. And I remember saying to my wife, "I got to go to the office and get my stuff. Everybody's there." So I run down to the office, which, I lived on the Upper West Side. So I got there pretty quickly, and everybody's moving out. So, that scene in The Big Short where everybody's moving out,
boxes,
and then the security guards are like, "Look down, go straight, walk, take left, and don't talk to anyone." And like that's literally in The Big Short at the end. They have these people walking out with the boxes. That was so true to a fault. Like literally the security guards telling you, "Don't do anything, don't talk to anybody, go." And then I remember the guy who yelled at them and goes, "I've been here 20 years, my whole life went down the drain." And anyway, it was a great experience. And then, but you know what we did, just like Israelis, we picked ourselves up, and Joseph and I, we all moved forward, and we went to Barclays. We actually had some great years there together, and it led to many more. So, you live and learn.
Definitely. Very Israeli, as you said. Look, I also spent time in capital markets. I was a specialty sales at Merrill's, and then so I worked a lot with research and with banking. Can you talk about the differences and why you switched and went back? Really?
Yeah. So I was head of tech research at Barclays, and I loved it. I was basically the tech strategist too. Was able to write and go beyond my coverage and kind of try to corral themes and whatnot. But I liked that.
I remember how much you loved thematic research back.
Yeah, thematic. And when I got to control the thematic research, it was a little easier because you're directing traffic. When you're being directed and you have to stop what you're doing to do what the director says, it's always so when it flipped and it was me, it was great. But what I did notice at the time, there were a lot of secular challenges for research, and the particular sector that I covered was being eaten by the cloud, except for one company, Apple. And it was great covering Apple, but that was it. That was the only company that anybody wanted to talk about. So I said, you know what is going to be fun, given I'm more senior, and I started to notice the companies started to like me more and talk to me more. I was like, I'm going to be a banker. And I was able to partner with this great mentor, Ken Moelis, who started a firm, and I thought this would be amazing. And I will tell you, I learned a ton. And the big difference when you become a banker versus an analyst is when you're an analyst, you're a talker. You're always coming up with it. I got to talk. There's silence in the room. He's like, well, let me say something. Like I gotta fill the void, and you're talking. And you think that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to not stop talking. But when you're a banker, you have to listen. Mm-hmm. And you should not, really talk until you need to. Less is more. And that skill is something that, that I learned as a banker. And I wouldn't say I perfected it because, it's really hard to keep a lid on this thing. But it was a great skill. So actually learning how to listen to companies and what really were the nuances was an amazing thing that has actually made me a better analyst today. But I was doing that about 6 years, and then really kind of when I really missed being in research. I missed driving themes and I missed the day-to-day of it, and really realized that's what I was best at. So I was like scheming a comeback, but I said if I was going to do it, I have to do it a new way, because what we believe and what was so great about Melius is that we believed that the silos within the sell side are broken because of AI, meaning it made zero sense to have one guy cover Google, one guy cover Apple, another guy cover NVIDIA, and another guy cover Microsoft. Mm-hmm. It's nonsense, because when you're a portfolio manager and even an analyst, you cover across sector, at least a couple of the Mag 7 names, and it's just silly to have one cover one cover none. It's like, because when you're thinking about what to invest in, you're often selling one for the other. Right. So we think that, and with AI, everything was merging. So what was amazing was I said, everything's going to merge. It's not going to make any sense to have all these silos, silly silos, where somebody can't talk about something and doesn't know even what Google's doing, doesn't know what Apple's doing. How can you have a conversation? NVIDIA, how do you not cover Microsoft and know what's going on in software and how agents are being created? And so anyway, and it was our vision that you could cover tech, the really important AI names, and drive the theme. And it's knock on wood, I think what's really working is that I love it, and I think my clients and my colleagues can see it. So that's what drives us. And we try to think of something every week to put out, either a chart or report that can have everybody talking. And because we have the license to go cross-sector, which is really not cross-sector anymore, it's all one, hopefully it's going well.
So let's come back to tech for a second, because I think you just kind of opened up the door here. You've been at tech since the early days, where sectors were so specified and sell side was so siloed that you could cover 8 printing stocks and not even be talking about, not talking about any of the equipment companies. There was a difference between wireless and wireline hardware at that point. Remember that?
Ridiculous.
And so we've moved away from that. So, and then, kind of wrap that up into, if you look at that evolution, maybe a little bit of Israeli tech, because, if I think about it, where's Israel been great? It actually started in printing. Yeah. And so there was a lot of technology there. And now, with I see a lot of this on your feed about NVIDIA. And NVIDIA, people talk about Israeli stocks, and it's not an Israeli stock, but it really is an Israeli stock, because one of the reasons that we got reunited is because of a little company named Mellanox that I was covering here in Tel Aviv. And is now, it's not the biggest part, but it's a pretty important part of the underbelly of what drives NVIDIA. So, a little bit of riffing on technology over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, Mellanox alone, I think, was about $3 billion or ish of revenue in the latest quarter for NVIDIA, or pretty close to it. And I'm very close. What's interesting about it is, going back in Israel, I remember when I was doing the imaging sector and saying, how can I be unique? How can I do imaging in a way that has a little bit of sizzle versus others? And definitely Israel kept coming up. There was electronics for imaging, Efi Arazi, and then my good friend Guy Gecht became the CEO by 2000. And that was a neat company, very volatile. So it was, even though it wasn't that big, it was a big company to cover. Then I covered it.
They had a real issue. They loved accounting too.
Yeah. And yeah. And but anyway, that was a fun one. And then there were all these like Cytex, and there was all this like I can't even. I mean, there's so many that came in. Like there was like everything sounded like it was like Effie, Kofax, this fax, this this thing, this text, this thing, and so it was pretty cool. And a lot of them wound up being acquired. And one of the one of the funnest ones was Indigo. I was about to cover that. It was listed in the Netherlands. That's right. And HP wound up buying them. They're
down in Rehovot.
Yeah. And Benny might be listening to the podcast. Hi, Benny. We started out with a little bit of an angle there in Israel. And then as we moved into large cap land, when about January 2003, I became the IT hardware analyst, which at the time was like covering internet, because it was HP, Dell, and IBM. And Apple was the small cap, and it was debatable whether you cover it. And so what was fun was being top imaging analyst at the time, you were starting to run out of market cap because everything got secularly challenged, with film going away, mail going away, Pitney Bowes and Kodak were super challenged. And so what was great was that I decided to recommend this little Apple. And the funny part was, when I upgraded it in 2004, in January, it was because the stock was down because they missed Power Mac sales. Nobody even remembers what a Power. And then about a week later, I realized, I said, if they get iPod right, it's a call option because Power Mac will come back. And then like a week later, I said, whoa, this iPod thing is the greatest thing I've ever seen. So I pretended I never said the Power Mac thing. And, the rest was history as an iPod story. And then it became iPhone, and the rest history. But in terms of Israel, Israel became, was always important, with regard to, there was always something going on in Israel. There was always something, some storage company even, and always printing. And I remained very close to the Hewlett-Packard guys throughout the first tranche of my research career. And there were always people here that knew what was going on. And then in banking, I spread my wings a little bit and broadened out a little bit, covered some semis here and there. And there was always great technology here. Optical technology was pretty strong here.
Very strong. That's where I did my first trip to Israel before I even moved here. Was actually to do a tour of all the little optical component companies that were popping up in Israel. It was actually one of the biggest deals in Israel in the first wave of technology. Was actually, I think it got bought, if I'm not mistaken, I forget its name, but it was an early optical deal.
And everybody thinks of cyber here, which was amazing. And I know Mickey Boudei and some real good entrepreneurs from here, but unfortunately, I never covered it as an analyst. So I was always doing the Israeli angle in these, weird places like that were, just not the mainstream. So, but there's always some great minds here, and and right now is no different. I'm hearing about a little, some of the AI companies coming up and some of the new technology. I think there's some quantum technology that's really exciting coming out of Israel. So, very, very exciting. And I have no doubt that Israel will find a way to, rise from this stronger. And I think quantum's a big opportunity for this area, in addition to AI. But quantum
deep tech, also talking a lot about deep tech, quantum. I mean, those are the thematics for Israel that are trending, and I think positioning there will be key. But it's interesting to see how fast Israel is coming out of the last couple of years we've had?
Well, I'm super bullish. I mean, you've seen the stock market, obviously, but I think that under the leadership we have in the U.S., I'm optimistic about the Abraham Accords and hoping that that cooler heads prevail and logic prevails. Coming from New York City, you don't see as much of that lately, but there's a lot of hope out there, and what I love about this place, everybody's optimistic. It's like, oh, there's a missile overhead, and I heard a boom, but boy, what are we doing tomorrow? Maybe I'll be able to go surfing tomorrow. Everybody here is bright light.
People were surfing during the Iran war.
It's probably safer there.
They weren't aiming for the water.
Hoping something hits out, so the wave gets bigger.
Here's a funny story. Joseph wrote, he was in Rana and I was in Tel Aviv. So in Tel Aviv, people are a little bit crazier than the rest of the country. And he wrote me, I went to the office, I saw this person that we know. I was like, okay, well, what's the mood? I was like, well, look, I mean, right after the rocket attack, I went for a run because I needed to kind of breathe some fresh air. And I know usually after one wave, there's time, until the second wave. So I actually went for a run and everybody was surfing.
Wow. What a culture. What a culture. It's great. It's great. And I don't think, in New York, we don't have the surf because, the island, but I can't imagine people in New York, out surfing. So.
Next question, I guess, going back to your experience, because we've been, working back and forth between, research, banking, big firms, boutique firms. So what is the difference between working at a boutique versus a big firm? Because this is what we've also been experiencing, Joseph and I. I mean, we worked at, those big banks. Then now we're moving to also a relatively big bank, but it's more like I would say, global boutique.
So we went from a place, I would describe it like this. We went from a place where it's true we met the CEO, but if he had seen us on the street, would he have remembered our names?
Probably not.
And then at this bank, you walk into a room and you're like, oh, Joe, I saw that little piece. I saw that little thing you posted on LinkedIn, and that's the CEO talking. And then here's a great story about working at a boutique, which it doesn't tell you how hard it is, which is what I want you to talk about. I was in Switzerland, and of course, Americans are idiots. We're always idiots. And I'm trying to figure out how to use the train just to get to the office. The little tram in Switzerland right outside for one stop. And I'm asking a guy if I bought the right ticket online, and all of a sudden the guy says, Joseph, can I help you? And I look up, and it's the chairman of our firm. Not the CEO, the chairman comes over to me and says, let me help you out here. And he brings me to the office and figures out my train ticket for me. So to me, that's really the difference between working at a big firm and working at a boutique.
Well, I think that in the research, it was founded by Scott Davis, Scott Weiss, and a few other guys that I worked with at Barclays. And, what I liked was I pitched a vision to them and they said, go for it. So I already told you the vision. And I think that at a boutique, you have to be creative, and it gets all your creative juices going more so than it does a sell-side bank. Because at a sell-side big bulge bank, you have too many silos, and you have to stay in too many lanes, and it limits your creativity. And it, frankly, in my opinion, makes research boring. Because you have to be like, I met management good, me like stock. And when you're at a boutique and you can swerve a little bit and get out of your lane, and it actually has made everything my lane, and I'm loving it. And I think you just have to be creative. You can be a little sassy. You have to be respectful, obviously, just like anything else. But I think that you're also fighting for your life. You're fighting to be heard, and there's a tipping point where you're fighting, and then you cross, and hopefully we matter now. And it's fun that way too. Is that when it's more gratifying, because when you're at a boutique and you're fighting to be heard, and then you start to matter, hopefully. And, being a former head of tech, you have a decent feel for what's going on. And so I think that's it. The creativity and the drive. It just it's bigger and it breathes new life into you. Like the sell side at a big shop is just too cookie cutter, too many things, quarterly previews. I just met with management, and we try to stay away from that stuff, and it's working. And we actually try to keep it simple as well. And a lot of folks in tech try to impress you with speeds, feeds, especially the networking analysts. I mean, it's hilarious. They're saying things that 1% of the readership understands. So you literally, so at a boutique, I think you have to say things that are understandable, more creative, and then swerve in and out of your lanes, and then bring it back to the center. And I think it's a massive advantage, frankly, not a detriment, a massive advantage we have over the bulges who just aren't creative.
Mm-hmm. Are you using new tools? Like we always talked about when I was a part of research management, getting into video. And then, of course, we'd say, well, how do we get into video? Because we've got 15 layers of compliance that would have to approve the video before we release the video. And so video was something. And now you've got AI tools that could either be viewed as, you know, when we were starting out, people used to put out these first looks, like the numbers would hit, you'd get that fax and you'd type out that quick note. This was X versus consensus. And now you still got, I think, some older analysts still doing that kind of first look, which is kind of useless these days.
Useless. I mean, the amount of people doing what Street Account already does for you. I mean, anyway, go ahead.
So, you know, those tools, are you looking at AI? What kind of tools are you using? Because you've got this advantage of much less hierarchy, appropriate but not constraining compliance, and the ability to be creative.
Interesting. And you also, just about that, I can see more and more videos on Instagram, reels of like research analysts at, you know, big banks talking about their stock picking, or, I mean, that's very new. I mean, just getting to start these things, start seeing these things popping up. That's exactly. Think about it.
Well, I mean, we do a video every week, and you know, like when I spoke on DeepSeek, like we had hundreds upon hundreds, watching it, and then if you don't talk on something, we learn quickly what people will click on. So I think there is a lot of video out there. I think that's sort of a commodity, table stakes, but I think that in terms of tools, I mean, we definitely sample, and the team is knowledgeable of all the AI tools out there. I mean, I just wrote a report while we were talking on Grok. No, I'm kidding. And copied and pasted. But, you know, I do think that those tools are very helpful in terms of, especially Grok and then ChatGPT and all of them. They do provide a lot of good context. However, you know, there's still mistakes in there. So I think we are using, you know, we have some new CRM tools, new publishing tools that I'm very excited about in general. But I think in general, the tools that we have to analyze, such as Grok, ChatGPT, Copilot, sampling them has actually made us smarter and quicker. But I don't think it substitutes for us. It doesn't substitute for us yet. I still think you have to proofread that stuff. There's always a little bit of an error in there. And
so we still got our day jobs.
Yeah. But at some point, I mean, it does feel like, you know, we're going to be like in the style of Ben, write a quick earnings note and then just quickly edit it. I do think we're almost there even right now, but you still really have to spend time proofing whatever comes out of there and reusing it. You know, I usually read it, and then you can tell if it's wrong, and then it's a supplement to the knowledge base.
So no associates.
I do have a couple. You know, and occasionally I make them. I go, what did Grok say on this? Like I'm like literally, you know, I'm telling them to use the tools. I want them to use the tools to the hilt, to the max. But I will say this, that you didn't ask me this, but one of the things that's really interesting about swerving out of your lane is that we've been very cautious on SaaS and software. We really feel that the coding tools and these tools are going to obviate a lot of SaaS and cut seats. And we really feel like we're in the early innings of a value shift towards semis, the picks and the shovels, even towards some of the hardware. and the hardware and the semis are becoming the new SaaS, and the SaaS is becoming the new hardware. And
it's all just cycling back on itself.
it is the software eating the world thing. That's what excites me so much, is that software eating the world was something that ruined almost my prior sector, and is just the reversal of it is breathing new life into.
You've got like $7 trillion in market cap of basically hardware. Semis.
I personally have I have double-digit trillions under coverage. I can't keep track, but yeah. And NVIDIA though and Broadcom are such a huge portion of it. I think the love will get spread around.
So what are the next big trends in global tech today?
What matters, because this is the story I said I was going to tell.
Yeah.
Remember we used to go to CES and MWC, and I remember this one time where we were both at Barclays and we are going to meet in Spain. And there was this massive snowstorm in New York. And you tell me, I took the Ambien to get a good night's sleep on the plane, and I wake up and we're still on the runway.
That's right. That's right. That was classic. I brought my associate Trevor, who I love, and Trevor's sitting next to me. That's back in the good days. We had business class seats. And I go, I'm going to pop a pill. I'm going to take the sleeping pill, and I want to be fresh. We're hosting clients tomorrow. He's like, yeah, that's cool. I'll, and then meanwhile, he's hitting me 7 hours later. We got to get off the plane. I go, oh, we're here? Awesome. Let's go. When's our first meeting? He goes, no, we're still at JFK.
Oh my God.
I mean, that was hilarious. That was pretty
I got
funny.
that one right.
Traveling is fun. Yeah. That's good times.
Those things still matter?
But didn't you do all the meetings for us?
I did all the meetings, of course.
We arranged them and you did them all. That's how we roll.
That's how we...
Team, baby. Yeah, that's great. That's great. That is a good story. I miss Trevor. So,
do the big shows matter anymore?
No. What matters is when and where Jensen Huang is at any given moment, and that's what matters. And we were fortunate enough to go to Computex and host a show before his keynote, and really get embedded in the Computex this year. And just listening to what he says matters. But no, the shows don't really matter. CES is really just good for the meetings and stuff. But what I think, I guess I spilled the beans a little bit. I think this movement where semiconductors and some of hardware and semi-cap equipment is the new oil, is the new natural resource, the new gold, and the commoditization of software is really packaged SaaS software. Like, we're just still so in the early innings of this, and the companies have no idea what's hitting them on the SaaS side, and the companies on the semi side. You're going to see a few get lucky that aren't as good as NVIDIA necessarily, and you're going to see a few that emerge, and it's going to continue to be where the action is. Semis, it's not stopping. This would be the equivalent of saying oil was going to stop, when we first invented the car. It's silly. It's like these talks, there's always people who go, this is just like the bubble, and wanna have an analogy. The analogy is not the internet bubble. It might be Henry Ford, and the rise of Standard Oil and those kind of things. And that's how important semis are.
So, how's the mood regarding Israel in the investment community today in New York right now?
Well, I don't know, the mood around Israel. I mean, I thought a lot of people noticed that the stock exchange perked up.
Really?
And as a Jew from New York, I'm super proud of the resilience here, and just really proud of how people move forward here, and think that this optimism here and the focus on education and what matters. And what's kind of cool is I see in the United States how people go to college and they get a degree in nothing. And what people do here is they go to the Army and get a degree in life. And I think that'll always be an advantage for Israel. And I think that there's definitely, among the patriotic Jewish community, always a desire to invest here and feed off your optimism. So I see that, but I think people have been a little, New York, where I am, is a little shell shocked right now, like since October 7th as well, because, we're having a lot of these protests and, a lot of things going on. And I told you actually, I would go off on this too long, but we see what's going on here, and just amazing what, we have nothing to complain about compared to what you guys have been going through. And we're very proud of the resilience and what's going on here. And I think that quantum, like I said, cyber will continue to be huge. Quantum, and I would love to hear about, more AI companies rising. There's actually some really good companies, obviously run by Israelis, that I've tracked, like Vast Data on the private side, and several others, frankly, that I'm, and then like there's a Weka.io, which is smaller, that I hear a lot about, but Vast Data is in New York, very near and dear to me. So you guys are well represented in New York, and I think a lot of people are watching still, and very much admiring, what you guys are able to do.
Well, I don't think we could have asked for a better opportunity to step a little bit outside of our specific mandate here at Market Makers IL. So we're going to end, though, and I don't know if I prepared you for this, so you could take a little bit of time. But we always end each episode with 4 rapid-fire questions. So you ready?
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Worst business advice you've ever received?
Oh, man. I'm not going to say who, but worst business advice I ever received. Probably, there was a couple, like in the bubble, like there was a lot of contracts going around, and somebody said, go to a job interview, tell them you're under contract and can't go. Like everything, and then the minute that happened, like there were certain like in the bubble, like it was so insane what they were doing, and I had coverage of imaging and people. So I would say some of the job interview advice I got probably wasn't economically as advantageous as it could have been.
Business icon, you've covered a lot of stocks, you've worked for a lot of people.
It's Jensen. You would probably think that a guy like me would say Steve Jobs, but it's definitely Jensen Huang of NVIDIA. There's just nobody close. I think NVIDIA is, of the Mag 7, probably the one that can go up the most, given its TAM. And I think his vision and how he stuck with it, I admire it. And I also admire how he is as a person. I how he's like, like you see him and he's like, Ben, and it's like, wow, like Steve Jobs obviously was like, who are you?
Right.
What's your purpose? And so I really admire that Jensen, how he treats people. He still treats people well. And he's definitely the most famous person in tech, hands down. And I just admire the heck out of the guy. I really do.
This might be a little bit tricky. Favorite Israeli snack food?
Ooh, I was probably Bamba.
There you go.
And there were some funny memes I got about Bamba. I won't say anything.
It's a family-friendly show.
Family-friendly show. But Bamba, definitely. My kids, Bamba. And then I would sneak some, and, they melt in your mouth. The whole thing, Bamba, man.
There you go. Last thing you changed your mind about?
Well, last thing, there's a lot of things. I could go into a political thing, but I'm not going to do that. I would say what was kind of neat about this new incarnation of myself in equity research was that we became huge bulls on IBM. And when I was covering IBM, I was never that bullish. I think I had a buy rating on it a few times, but generally was a bit cautious because of the movement to the cloud and those kind of things. And then to see it remake itself, and I had a chance to kind of look at it with a clean slate about 2 or 3 years ago. I just really really liked their mix shift strategy and getting a clean look at it without a lot of the stuff that kept us bearish because they got rid of a lot of the businesses that slowed them down. That's been fun. And so I think that I think the best analysts, always change their mind and admit, hey, here's what changed. But it's been fun changing my mind on IBM and just staying bullish. I keep getting challenged to get more cautious on something like that. And you got so many good friends there, and it's fun to see them succeed. Stocks up a ton, and seeing them succeed, I think, is good for the USA and obviously our franchise. So thanks for that question.
Excellent.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure being here.
All right.